Super cool. Light Steve Parker audiobooks. See there? Spent $50 on that. Local craftsman makes them in his shed or something. All right. You like the Mo? Growing that in for no reason at all. It's cold in New Zealand, okay? All right. So, today we are... Oops, I haven't even plugged in the mic. I had it unplugged for the session over on Steve what is it called? Steve Stuff Gaming. That's the other channel. There we are. Yeti's plugged in. Lovely. I've got the script all ready. I've done all the organizing that I have to do. But then I started streaming live a bit earlier than I intended to. I've gotten awfully used to the methods over on the gaming, where you let it run for a few minutes before you actually start the game to give people a chance to join. Okay, so The Invisible Man, Chapter 5. Let's see how this goes. Got a few voices, a couple of new ones, so yeah, should be interesting. Okay. Mommy memo, mommy memo, mommy memo. A bit of water. Okay. And recording. Testing 1, 2, 3. Chapter 5. The Burglary at the Vicarage. The facts of the burglary at the vicarage came to us chiefly through the medium of the vicar and his wife. It occurred in the small hours of Whit Monday, the day devoted in Epping to the club festivities. Mrs. Bunting, it seems, woke up suddenly in the stillness that comes before the dawn, with the strong impression that the door of their bedroom had opened and closed. She did not arouse her husband at first, but sat up in bed, listening. She then distinctly heard the pad, pad, pad of bare feet coming out of the adjoining dressing room and walking along the passage towards the staircase. As soon as she felt assured of this, she aroused the Reverend Mr. Bunting as quickly as possible. He did not strike a light, but putting on his spectacles, her dressing gown, and his bath slippers, he went out on the landing to listen. He heard quite distinctly a fumbling going on at his study desk downstairs, and then a violent sneeze. At that, he returned to his bedroom, armed himself with the most obvious weapon, the poker, and descended the staircase as noiselessly as possible. Mrs. Bunting came out on the landing. The hour was about 4, and the ultimate darkness of the night was past. There was a faint shimmer of light in the hall, but the study doorway yawned impenetrably black. But the study doorway yawned impenetrably black. Everything was still, except the faint creaking of the stairs under Mr. Bunting's tread and the slight movements in the study. Then something snapped. The drawer was opened, and there was a rustle of papers. Then came an imprecaution, and a match was struck, and the study was flooded with yellow light. Mr. Bunting was now in the hall, and through the crack of the door he could see the desk and the open drawer and a candle burning on the desk, but the robber he could not see. He stood there in the hall, undecided what to do, and Mrs. Bunting, her face white and intent, crept slowly downstairs after him. One thing kept Mr. Bunting's courage, the persuasion that this burglar was a resident in the village. They heard the chink of money and realized that the robber had found the housekeeping reserve of gold, £2.10 in half sovereigns altogether. At that sound, Mr. Bunting was nerved to abrupt action. Gripping the poker firmly, he rushed into the room, closely followed by Mrs. Bunting. "Surrender!" No, mess that voice up. "So we've only done him very gently so far, and this is sort of how he speaks. Hello, I'm the Reverend Bunting. So if he cries fiercely in that voice, it would sound like, 'Surrender!'" cried Mr. Bunting fiercely, and then stooped, amazed. Apparently, the room was perfectly empty. Yet their conviction that they had at that very moment heard somebody moving in the room had amounted to a certainty. For half a minute, perhaps, they stood gaping. Then Mrs. Bunting went across the room and looked behind the screen, while Mr. Bunting, by a kindred impulse, peered under the desk. Then Mrs. Bunting turned back the window curtains, and Mr. Bunting looked up the chimney and probed it with a poker. Then Mrs. Bunting scrutinized the waste paper basket, and Mr. Bunting opened the lid of the coal scuttle. Then they came to a stop and stood with eyes interrogating each other. "I could have sworn," said Mr. Bunting. "The candle," said Mrs. Oh, wait. Oh, that's very odd. Okay, hold on. He has two lines, one after the other. You just wouldn't see that in a modern script at all. Okay. "The candle," said Mr. Bunting. "Who lit the candle?" "The drawer," said Mrs. Bunting. "And the money's gone." She went hastily to the doorway. "Of all the strange occurrences." There was a violent sneeze in the passage. They rushed out, and as they did so, the kitchen door slammed. "Bring the candle," said Mr. Bunting, and led the way. They both heard a sound of bolts being hastily shot back. As he opened the kitchen door, he saw through the scullery that the back door was just opening, and the faint light of early dawn displayed the dark masses of the garden beyond. He is certain that nothing went out of the door. It stood open for a moment, and then closed with a slam. See that? It switched from past tense to present tense and then back again as well. Again, things you don't see in modern writing. As it did so, the candle Mrs. Bunting was carrying from the study flickered and flared. It was a minute or more before they entered the kitchen. The place was empty. They refastened the back door, examined the kitchen, pantry, and scullery thoroughly, and at last went down into the cellar. There was not a soul to be found in the house, search as they would. Daylight found the vicar and his wife, a quaintly costumed little couple, still marvelling about on their own ground floor by the unnecessary light of a guttering candle. That's it. Chapter 5 is very short. We'll move on and do Chapter 6 as well. Bella Simpson said hi. Hi, Bella. How are you doing? Welcome, welcome. That's very odd. Something I found, particularly with Wells' writing, there are a lot of what you would consider to be like hard rules in modern English that either didn't exist at the time or he just ignores. He didn't care about them at all. I'm not sure. But he did some wild things in there. Tim C5 master export. There we go. And another copy because I'm very uptight. Tim C5 edit A. Tim, of course, being short for the Invisible Man. Okay, here we go. Chapter 6. See if we can get them both going, hey? Chapter 6. The Furniture That Went Mad. Now, it happened that in the early hours of Whit Monday, before Milly was hunted out for the day, Mr. Hall and Mrs. Hall both rose and went noiselessly down into the cellar. Their business there was of a private nature, and had something to do with the specific gravity of their beer. They had hardly entered the cellar when Mrs. Hall found she had forgotten to bring down a bottle of sarsaparilla from their joint room. As she was the expert and principal operator in this affair, Hall very properly went upstairs for it. I don't know why Mrs. Hall is Mrs. Hall and Mr. Hall is just Hall. It's a bit weird, but there you go. On the landing, he was surprised to see that the stranger's door was ajar. He went on into his own room and found the bottle as he had been directed. But returning with the bottle, he noticed that the bolts of the front door had been shot back, that the door was in fact simply on the latch. And with a flash of inspiration, he connected this with the stranger's room upstairs and the suggestions of Mr. Teddy Henfrey. He distinctly remembered holding the candle while Mrs. Hall shot these bolts overnight. At the sight, he stopped, gaping, then, with the bottle still in hand, went upstairs again. He rapped at the stranger's door. There was no answer. He rapped again, then pushed the door wide open and entered. It was as he expected. The bed, the room also, was empty. And what was stranger, even to his heavy intelligence, on the bedroom chair and along the rail of the bed were scattered the garments, the only garments, so far as he knew, and the bandages of their guest. His big slouch hat, even, was cocked jauntily over the bedpost. As Hall stood there, he heard his wife's voice coming out of the depths of the cellar with that rapid telescoping of the syllables and interrogative cocking up of the final words to a high note, by which the West Sussex villager is wont to indicate a brisk impatience. "George, you got what I want?" At that, he turned and hurried down to her. I didn't download the voices to remind myself of how they sound. Pause. Come on.
What's that? You don't say so. Get up, old girl. I suppose I
What's
must see
that?
about this.
You don't
Women
say
don't
so.
know everything.
Right. He's a little bit piratey. What's that? You don't say so. At that, he turned and hurried down to her. "Johnny," he said over the rail of the cellar steps. "'Twas the truth what Henfrey says. He's not in his room, he ain't, and the front door's unbolted." At first, Mrs. Hall did not understand, and as soon as she did, she resolved to see the empty room for herself. Hall, still holding the bottle, went first. "If he ain't there," he said, "his clothes are, and what he doing without his clothes then? 'Tis a most curious business." As they came up the cellar steps, they both, it was afterwards ascertained, fancied they heard the front door open and shut, but seeing it closed and nothing there, neither said a word to the other about it at the time. Mrs. Hall passed her husband in the passage and ran on first upstairs. Someone sneezed on the staircase. Hall, following 6 steps behind, thought that he heard her sneeze. She, going on first, was under the impression that Hall was sneezing. She flung open the door and stood regarding the room. "Of all the curious," she said. She heard a sniff, close behind her head, as it seemed, and, turning, was surprised to see Hall a dozen feet off on the topmost stair. But in another moment he was beside her. She bent forward and put her hand on the pillow and then under the clothes. "Cold," she said. "He's been up this hour or more." As she did so, a most extraordinary thing happened. The bedclothes gathered themselves together, leapt up suddenly into a sort of peak, and then jumped headlong over the bottom rail. It was exactly as if a hand had clutched them in the centre and flung them aside. Immediately after, the stranger's hat hopped off the bedpost, described a whirling flight in the air through the better part of a circle, and then dashed straight at Mrs. Hall's face. Then, as swiftly, came the sponge from the washstand, and then the chair, flinging the stranger's coat and trousers carelessly aside. And laughing dryly in a voice singularly like the stranger's. It's for editing later. Turned itself up with its 4 legs at Mrs. Hall, seemed to take aim at her for a moment, and charged at her. She screamed and turned, and then the chair legs came gently but firmly against her back and impelled her and Hall out of the room. The door slammed violently and was locked. The chair and bed seemed to be executing a dance of triumph for a moment, and then abruptly everything was still. Mrs. Hall was left almost in a fainting condition in Mr. Hall's arms on the landing. It was with the greatest difficulty that Mr. Hall and Milly, who had been roused by her scream of alarm, succeeded in getting her downstairs and applying the restoratives customary in such cases. "'Tis spirits," said Mrs. Hall. "I know 'tis spirits. I read in papers of 'em, tables and chairs leaping and dancing." "I'll take a drop more, Johnny," said Hall. "'Twill steady you." "Lock him out," said Mrs. Hall. "Don't let him come in again. I half guessed I might have known, with them goggling eyes and bandaged head and never going to church of a Sunday and all they bottles, more'n it's right for anyone to have. He put the spirits into the furniture. My good furniture! 'Twas in that very chair my poor dear mother used to sit when I was a little girl. To think it should rise up against me now!" Fun. "Just a drop more, Johnny," said Hall. "Your nerves is all upset." They sent Milly across the street through the golden 5 o'clock sunshine to rouse up Mr. Sandy Wadgers, the blacksmith. Mr. Hall's compliments, and the furniture upstairs was behaving most extraordinary. Would Mr. Wadgers come round? He was a knowing man, was Mr. Wadgers, and very resourceful. He took quite a grave view of the case. New voice. What shall Mr. Wadgers sound like? "I'm darned if that aren't witchcraft," was the view of Mr. Sandy Wadgers. "You weren't horseshoes for such gentry as he." He came round greatly concerned. They wanted him to lead the way upstairs to the room, but he didn't seem to be in any hurry. He preferred to talk in the passage. Over the way, Huxter's apprentice came out and began taking down the shutters of the tobacco window. He was called over to join the discussion. Oh, hiccups. He was called over to join the discussion. Mr. Huxter naturally followed over in the course of a few minutes. The Anglo-Saxon genius for parliamentary government asserted itself. There was a great deal of talk and no decisive action.
"Let's have the facts first,"
insisted Mr. Sandy Wadgers.
"Let's be sure we be acting perfectly right in busting that there door open. A door unbust is always open to busting, but you can't unbust a door once you've busted in."
And suddenly, and most wonderfully, the door of the room upstairs opened of its own accord. And as they looked up in amazement, they saw, descending the stairs, the muffled figure of the stranger, staring more blackly and blankly than ever with those unreasonably large blue glass eyes of his. He came down stiffly and slowly, staring all the time. He walked across the passage, staring, then stopped.
"Look there! Look there!"
he said, and their eyes followed the direction of his gloved finger and saw a bottle of sarsaparilla. Hard by the cellar door. Then he entered the parlour and suddenly, swiftly, viciously slammed the door in their faces. Not a word was spoken until the last echoes of the slam had died away. They stared at one another.
"Well, if that don't lick everything,"
said Mr. Wadgers, and left the alternative unsaid.
"I'd go in and ask him about it,"
said Wadgers to Mr. Hall.
"I demand an explanation."
It took some time to bring the landlady's husband up to that pitch. At last he rapped, opened the door, and got as far as,
"Excuse me." "Go to the devil,"
said the stranger in a tremendous voice,
"and shut that door after you."
So that brief interview terminated. Chapter 6. 5 and 6 in the can. They're not very long chapters, these ones. Oops. TIMC6. Master. Export. Was that 12 minutes before editing? Chapter 5 was like 5 minutes, so pretty short. Export audio, second copy. Tim C6. Edit A. Lovely. Fantastic. There we go. So, okay, that's that for the moment, is it not? It is. Character samples, no, back. There we go. 3 master, 4 master, 5 and 6. I don't like a touch screen. Not as precise as I would like, not as precise as a mouse, but there you go. Does the job nicely. So there you go. That's it for today. That's all my recording. I'll do, let's see, it's Thursday, isn't it? Yes. So tomorrow I'll come back after my lunchtime, so around the same time-ish, and we'll do some master editing and maybe some sound effects as well. Chapter 5 is very, very short. I think I could do that in a day. It's like 5 minutes. That's nothing. It should take a couple of hours tops. 2 or 3, maybe. Depends. The sound effects weren't that complicated, were they? If we go back and have a look at 5, there's a little bit of stepping around. There is actually some stuff. Yeah, actually, it's more sound effects than text in that one. So I might be getting ahead of myself thinking I can do it in one day. But, yeah, we shall see. Nonetheless, we'll be back tomorrow anyway to see how much we can get done. So thank you for coming along. I hope you've enjoyed this little view. I hope you like my little light. Complete bloody waste of money, but oh well, there you go. I like it, so it's fine, I guess. And the string that holds my microphone in exactly the right place. You could get a mount to do it, but honestly, the string is easier to adjust, I can just sort of tighten bits and move the mic, and I have it sitting in exactly the right spot to be pointing at my mouth so that it records it, but it's not in line with it, so it's not getting all the windy pops, pop, 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 although I've got a pretty good filter on it anyway. This type of filter is known as a dead cat. Charming name. And it's specifically designed to stop wind noise. So it's pretty good at what I need it to do. I used to use a pop filter in front of it as well, but I don't really need it with this, and certainly not with this setup. Yeah, I like it. I like how this works. Off to one side, not in a straight line. It's good. Okay. We'll see you next time, I guess. I don't really know how to stop this. This is all just being done on my phone on this channel. I don't really know how better to set it up in the booth. I think this is about as good as it gets, unless I pull in a webcam or something like that. I don't really want to do that sort of thing. You get the proper streaming on Steve Stuff Gaming, and on this channel when I'm doing the actual editing. You see the proper stuff. But when we're in the booth, this is probably about it. Okay. Thanks. I hope you had fun. See you next time. Bye-bye.